looking at Blackstone, right? And then it's Blackstone's fault that the real estate prices are going up. No, it isn't. And again, yeah, I think that
so why is he pursuing two policies that you vehemently disagree with?
Because I think that it is
flailing on the issue of the economy with the American people.
Governor, I think that it is politically beneficial for politicians to tell people that their problems are easily solvable with the stroke of a pen.
Everything he said is technically true, and he seems to think that the solution is more available units for rent. That's not the issue. That's not the crisis that we're addressing. Ben Shapiro and Lane LeBrun, I know we were working on this. And, we always want to try and be tactful in approaching this because I think Ben Shapiro is right about a lot. And I think he's been wrong about an increasing amount as of late. And right now when there's a civil sort of, I don't even want to say civil war, but there are these fractions on the right and there's sort of these cliques being created. You have one side saying, hey, it's really important to be consistent about our principles. And I agree. Ben Shapiro often toes that line. I think he believes it. But he will pull a sleight of hand. And I don't think that his argument here on Gavin Newsom's podcast was in good faith regarding housing prices. First off, let me ask you this. When we talk about the housing crisis in this country, what do you think? Okay. My next question is, when President Trump is saying that there will be legislation that will bar institutional investors from purchasing single-family homes in this country, what do you think that's meant to address? I know what your answer is. Ben Shapiro on Gavin Newsom's podcast said, you're talking about rent prices, right? I don't think that that's being particularly straightforward or honest. And that's why when we've addressed this, I offered a 6-point prescription on how I genuinely believe we could lower housing prices in this country. Here's a refresher. So let me walk you back through it. 6-point plan, okay, just to make sure there's no misinterpretation. Ban of purchases from institutional investors or foreign investors on single-family home units. Only citizens, local permanent residents can buy homes with very strict verification, severe penalties for anyone housing, renting to, or selling homes to illegal aliens, along with increased deportations. An legal immigrant renting period for the first 2 years of residency. Incentivize starter homes on the builder side with tax breaks, tax credits, and then incentivize first-time home buyers with a tax deduction for that first year. And I think this is important where we'll often discuss what conservatism, put America first means. I certainly think that means the government should act in the best interests of its people, provided they are not violating any fundamental constitutional rights. And when you take into account that in 1991, for example, the median age for first-time homebuyers was 28 years old, now it's 38 years old. Some of that includes personal responsibility, yes. Some of it includes some failures at an institutional level. Conservatism is of no value if it's not actually addressing those problems. So now we find ourselves at a point where the population of renters is growing at a rate like 3 times faster than homeowners. Is that good for the country? And then you have to ask yourself, is it good for the country when there are people who are here illegally who have no business being in this country, are homeowners in the place of young working Americans? That brings us to Ben Shapiro talking with Gavin Newsom, making this claim when the jumping off point was Donald Trump's policy on institutional investors purchasing up single-family unit homes.
Okay, the fact is that in the state of California, for example, exorbitantly low percentage of
relative to other states.
Relative to other states for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and guess what? Real estate here, really, really expensive. And meanwhile, if you go over to Charlotte, North Carolina, where the real estate prices actually have been diving, you actually do have pretty significant corporate ownership. And here we're talking about large corporations, not like small mom and pop operations where you own a second home to rent it out. And typically speaking, when a corporation invests in an area like, say, Phoenix, and then builds up an enormous number of rental units, because that's what happens. They buy, let's say, a single family home, now they rent it out. Okay, so they just increased the stock of rent, right? Which means that the rental prices go down. And then corporations typically are investing in areas where it's easier to buy and easier to renovate. And easier to build. Like renovating is very difficult in places like New York and in certain parts of California. It's a lot easier in, say, Austin or Phoenix or Florida. And so what you've seen is actually there is not only zero correlation between corporate ownership of real estate assets and price of rent, for example. In many cases, there's a reverse correlation. And so trying to refocus on look at this terrible. It isn't BlackRock. BlackRock doesn't own real estate assets in this fashion. But if you're looking at Blackstone, right, and then it's Blackstone's fault that the real estate prices are going up. No, it isn't. And again, I think that
so why is he pursuing two policies that you vehemently disagree with?
Because I think that it is
flailing on the issue of the economy with the American people.
Governor, I think that it is politically beneficial for politicians to tell people that their problems are easily solvable with the stroke of a pen.
Now, do you see what Ben Shapiro just did there? Everything that he said is factually true. And so he made the case for Donald Trump's policy if you want more first-time home buyers. Everything he said is technically true, and he seems to think that the solution is more available units for rent. That's not the issue. That's not the crisis that we're addressing. And by the way, yes, part of this crisis has been created by the government. It would be like someone taking you out on a boat, you falling off the boat, drowning, and then throwing you a motorcycle when you need a life preserver. Yeah, the housing market was screwed up. We can go back to the subprime loans. We know all about that. But at this point in time, people are not able to buy homes. People aren't complaining about not being able to rent. As a matter of fact, in the absence of home ownership to build equity in a nest egg, people are forced to rent. And Ben Shapiro's going, well, see, now that isn't it good? Institutional investors make it so you're more likely to have to rent. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw a sleight of hand. He starts by referring to these as real estate prices. He's like, real estate's cheaper, real estate, and then slides into calling it rent.
Rent.
Hoping that you don't notice he avoided the actual elephant in the room, which is home buying.
He also slided when he said single family homes, and then they start building these rental units.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. I think we all understand single family home as a standalone house.
Yeah.
That one family lives in. No one thinks single family home and thinks an apartment.
And this is also why, by the way, Ben Shapiro has been invited on the show, and I think he's pretty respectful, and I think we could have a good conversation. But when people say, I can't believe that you would platform insert X person here, let's say Nick Fuentes, I go, well, hold on, he's sitting next to Gavin Newsom. Does anyone want to make the case that Nick Fuentes is more dangerous and more corrosive to the American fabric than that guy running for president who wanted to trans kids and accused you of hate speech if you spoke out against it? That's why I'm not going to play that game. And here's the truth. And please check the references. Yes, rents are down. Purchase prices are way up. So he used Charlotte and Phoenix as examples. Let me give you, rent prices. Charlotte, they're down about 1.4%. Phoenix, they're down about 4%. This is just year over year, okay? By the way, the national average for rent is down 1.1% year over year. So it's not like they're particular standouts in making things more affordable for people. Let's contrast that with the problem that the policy is meant to address and the problem that you care about. Check the references. Home prices are up astronomically. So if you look at Charlotte from 2015 to 2025, 173,000 average price for a home to 410,000, more than double.
Jeez.
Phoenix, 215,000. In 2015, 213,000. 2025, 514,000. So your rent's gone down a percentage point or two. The prices of homes have doubled. This approach to conservatism, therefore, that's a good thing, and we want bigger institutional investors. It's not the right-wing extremism that would be the reason for losing midterms or the next national election. I would argue it's this approach. I would argue that anyone making the case for large institutional investors because it's easier for you to rent, even though purchasing a home is further from reach than ever before, I don't think that that's actually something. Not only do I think optically, not only do I think that it won't resonate, I actually think it's immoral because that's not the result of the free market, to be clear. It really isn't. These institutional investors, we heard it from Elizabeth Warren, they're too big to fail. So they're gambling with your money. What do you think is going to happen if there's a crash? You think they're going to be left there holding the bag? No, of course not. You will. So on the front end, you're not able to purchase a home. You're priced out because of these people. And on the tail end, well, you're going to be subsidizing them in the form of a bailout. That's inevitable. That will happen. I don't understand it. Maybe someone can present this case. I don't know if this is someone thinks that it's a Milton Friedman free market argument. Like, no. Actually, conservatism should really support the institutional investors pricing people out of their neighborhoods so that we can create a permanent class of renters. I can only imagine making this case if you think it's beneficial to the American fabric at large to have a permanent class of renters. And here's another truth. He points to Charlotte and Phoenix. Well, he's right. Institutional investors own a disproportionate share of single-family homes in those areas. So like in the national average, institutional investors owning these single-family homes is like 1-2%. In Charlotte, it's 18%. In Phoenix, it's 10%. So more institutional investors. Ben Shapiro says, that's good. That's why I am against Donald Trump's policy, because rent is cheaper. I go, okay, more institutional investors. Rent is slightly cheaper and home prices are astronomically inflated. What bothers me is when you have people from that side of the conservative aisle saying that we're abandoning our principles, our free market principles, that we're saying, no, this is a manipulated market. And it's a manipulated market to benefit institutional investors, by the way, who are not beholden to the American people at all, but international coalitions often at the cost of Americans. How is that looking out for our people?
Important to note that Charlotte and Phoenix are both cities with high populations of migrant influx.
That's true as well.
Both very high, one from Latin America, one from overseas. But.
Which is why part of my multi-point plan is that you cannot purchase a home if you are here illegally. As a matter of fact, you're not allowed to stay in a home if you are here illegally. That should go to an American homeowner.
Why do you think Ben is, and I have a theory on this, but it seems like he has such a worship of free markets that he's blind to the realities that those free markets cause. Like he'll say, free trade is good. Yeah, in theory, until it, deindustrializes America and we can no longer make anything.
Right.
The browning of America, I don't care about it. Okay, yes, until you completely lose your culture and the thing that made America possible in the first place. Because it's a weird wing of the conservative sphere that just blankly worships the free market as though it is some benevolent being. It's a very strange phenomenon that really needs to be dealt with.
It definitely needs to be dealt with. And the free market, when we generally think of it, especially when you go back to, like someone like Adam Smith and the invisible hand that determines markets, right? Supply and demand. Ultimately, that is predicated around the idea of a goods or service creator, provider, and a consumer. When you add international speculative markets where people are actually looking to squeeze out profit that does not benefit the consumer, we now have a different motive than creating the best product in a competitive market for consumers who can vote with their dollar. And then when you add more complications to it, for example, like the housing market, where banks are forced to take on risk, as we've seen for a very long time, to people who had no business being in those homes, who would never be able to pay it back. But hey, that money's insured by you, the taxpayer. Now we've added to the problem. And now we have institutional investors buying up homes when they have no connection to your community whatsoever. This is not good for America. It's not good for people in these communities. And I don't know how any conservative can argue for it. Here's some more proof for you. Median home prices, by the way, in both of those places, they are continuing to skyrocket. So let me give you some context here. Yes, you can purchase a home, and we've talked about this. You can make some decisions where you can cut some costs and you can purchase a home a little further out of the city. And a first-time home is within reach for many people, especially if you compare it to previous generations, the amenities, the size. Still, we do need to address the fact that in Charlotte, for example, the median income is $78,000. In 2005, the median income that would be required to buy the average first-time home would be about $32,000. In 2020, it'd be about $50,000. 2025, $91,000. This outpaces the inflation of wages, to be clear. Phoenix, the median income is $77,000 right now. 2005, what would be needed to purchase that home would be about $50,000. 2020, $71,000. From 2020 to 2025, $122,000 would need to be the median income to match up with the average home in the Phoenix area. I don't think we're going to get anywhere by saying, you know what, these populists, they actually don't have a point. And you also need to look at that acceleration. How is that free market where you see a graph that goes up and then spikes up because of an artificially engineered, manipulated, picking winners and losers market post-COVID? In 15 years, that median income required went up about $21,000. In 5 years, it doubled.
It's incredible.
And then in places like Charlotte, if you look at the new home, there's like a lot of new homes built. The ones that would be defined as starter level homes was like 1.1% of all new homes built.
Yeah.
So that's the free market saying that's what we can make money on, but how is that actually serving the community at all?
No, exactly right. And
you want to see some free market? Look at Mondami and Newsom and what they've done in their environments. You make them less desirable, and you're going to drive prices down. For sale signs everywhere in Manhattan now. People are getting out of Dodge. They're getting out for their 181 days, their 6 months a year to avoid taxes, and now they're just moving out entirely.
Yeah, but do you know who buys that? It's international speculators that come in and like, well, New York will be good again. I'll pay exorbitant prices for these right now because it'll go up in the future.
And then you compound that by the fact that Mamdani wants to raise property taxes right now while instituting rent freezes. Well, let me ask you this. What do you think happens there? You're someone who owns properties. Let's say you own 5. 3 now are facing rent control, rent freezes. Your property taxes go up. What do you think happens to the cost of those remaining 2 properties that are not rent controlled? So this is how the left, they benefit those who don't contribute, those who are in subsidized housing, those who lock down an apartment and they're fine living with rats. But if you're working hard and you want to pay for a semi-decent apartment, guess what? That's completely out of reach as the result of these policies to correct white privilege.
Isn't rent control a rent freeze anyway?
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
I know what happens. They get desperate. The owners of the properties get desperate, and they sell for a super low price to who? The city.
Yes.
The city uses that. They make it to be low-income housing or government-funded housing. That's how they do it.
Yep.
That's how they turn New York City into a commie state.
Yeah, and by the way, if you have the income of the median panhandler, you still can snag this beauty in Gary, Indiana. So institutional investment may result in cheaper rent, though it's really just part of a national trend right now overall. It seems to have, to use his word, seems to have an inverse correlation with reducing the costs of homes. And if Ben Shapiro would like to come on and make the case on home prices for people to purchase, I'd like to have that discussion. I know he was going to come on a while back, and I don't know what happened. I guess it fell through. He's still welcome to, and of course, we'll keep the tone respectful. Oh, you're still here? And you're still watching this on YouTube? You've probably noticed something is missing by now. I'm not here. That's because the Live Daily Show is now streaming exclusively on Rumble weekdays at 11 a.m. Eastern. Tune in there, where nothing is censored.